All right, so tonight's meetup is basically, the idea to this is to have myself talk about my experiences being in the game industry. And also we have another speaker after me, Christian, who's going to be talking about his experience in the game industry. We call it the Guide to a Career in Games Using Unity because that's what we use. And we also have two completely different paths into the industry. His is more the educational way, mine is more the non-educational way, probably the way you shouldn't do it, but hopefully by listening to my story, you might change your mind on education. So we'll jump into my talk, which is starting a career in games when you know literally nothing. This is very true for me. I absolutely knew nothing when it came to video game development when I first started. I have a completely different background. But a little bit about me. I've lived in Ottawa all of my life, so for 30 years I've lived in Ottawa. Now I live in Montreal. I moved there in December. But I come to Ottawa a lot. I think maybe once a week we come back to Ottawa because we have other events, we have other people that we do business with, so I travel back and forth quite a bit. But my primary title is I'm the co-founder of Hidden Lanterns, which is a game studio that I'm starting up with my partner. Hopefully in the future that studio is going to be located in Montreal, but who knows, it could be here. It's hard to say. But this talk is basically going to be a story of how I became a game developer, and hopefully somebody here can find some inspiration along the way. So what do? I do a lot of stuff. So Hidden Lanterns, OJAM, which is the Ottawa Game Jam, CGX, the Capital Gaming Expo, the Meatly Games. I partnered with my partner who is known as the Meatly. He does webcomics on game development. Carmen Interactive, I do work with them. Jillian Mood and Partners, the Ottawa Unity User Group, and the coming up Ottawa Google Developer Group. And there's a ton of unofficial companies that I help out with, like IGDA Global. I do sponsorship packages for them and whatnot. So I do a lot of stuff. But before I got into game development, it's quite the story. Much like probably most of you, I played a lot of video games all my life. I was very much back in the early, I guess the 90s, I was into Doom, Duke Nukem, Wolfenstein, all that stuff. Later on, it was the Blizzard games like Diablo. I did play World of Warcraft for 7 years. I know, it's terrible. But I was a big fan of Halo and Xbox achievements. I was what they call an achievement whore. I went around, it didn't matter what the game was, I would play it just to get the achievements. But once I got over 100,000 achievement points, I was done. I didn't want to get achievements anymore. But anyways, my mom always said that I should make games. And my mom is actually here today in the back. And all my life, she said I should make games or do something in games. And I never listened to her because it was too complicated. I didn't want to know how to program. It was stupid. I just wanted to play games, and that was dumb. And then I made another good decision. I quit school. I think it was grade 10 or something like that. I quit everything. I didn't want to do high school. It was boring. I wasn't learning anything. It was stupid. So I got a job, and I got a lot of jobs, terrible jobs. I worked in fast food. I did customer service, telemarketing, door-to-door sales. I was a butcher for a while. I did truck unloading. I even worked at a bank for a while. And after I worked at the bank, that was kind of it. I was like, all right, I'm not doing this job hopping thing anymore. It was terrible. So I went back to school. I went to college. It was like a private college. And that was a giant waste of money. It was for, I think, program analysis and web development. And there was no teacher or anything like that. I learned everything through Google. I did very well. I finished in like 10 months or something like that. But I learned basically nothing. It was a complete waste of time and money. But the one thing I got out of it was I met somebody who was in IT, and I got my first career job in IT. And I was doing help desk support for a bunch of different medical clinics. And it was okay, but I did this for like 7 years. I worked in hospitals, I worked for lawyers. I will never work for doctors and lawyers ever again. That was terrible. I do enjoy their assistants, they're a hoot, but not the doctors and lawyers. But this was essentially my job. I don't know if anyone here has seen the IT Crowd. That's what I did for 7 years, and it was the worst, so I quit my career, and I just never looked back. So that's cool. Now what? I've got, at the time, like, I don't know, like 13 years of work experience, no education whatsoever, though. I had no idea what to do, so I took some personal time. I just kind of took time off from everything. I actually drove to Vancouver from Ottawa. I went all the way around northern Ontario, drove straight across, just went on a little trek to kind of clear my mind. I think it was like 2 weeks or something like that. That was fun, it was interesting, but I mean, in the end, it was just a trip. I didn't learn anything about myself. So I moved back in with my mom. So in my late 20s, no job, no career, no nothing, moved back in with my mom. And what does she do? She nags me about making video games. And so I said, fine. So I listened to her. And so at this point, I had literally no idea where to begin. I want to make games, but I don't know what to do. So talking to people was kind of my only option. I was not going to do school. School wasn't going to happen. I already spent a bunch of money going to school, and it was in debt from it. It just wasn't going to happen. So I needed some contacts. Who can I talk to that's in the game industry that might, have some leads on how I begin? Well, luckily enough, there was this video game media company that I started kind of as a hobby years back. And we did like a video podcast just talking about the game industry and stuff like that. We went to conferences and interviewed people and just talked about video games and stuff. It was nothing game developer related, it was all gamers, but I felt like it was a good list of contacts that I have from my past. And I actually did an interview with Jason Nguyen's about Starwall that was being released by Breakfall. And they were showcasing their game at a conference. And so I remember him from this interview that I had, which this interview is actually on YouTube, I think still. And so I figured, okay, I'll reach out to him and see if he has any advice on how I make video games. And that's what I said. I said, how do you make games? And of course, he said, well, you could read this book by this guy, read this book by that guy. You could learn programming here and there. That wasn't going to happen. I was going to read a book. I wasn't interested in reading a book or taking lessons or anything like that. And then he said, or you could download Unity and give that a shot. So I downloaded Unity on Christmas Day of 2013. Never looked back. So downloading Unity, had to get started, knew absolutely nothing. I mean, I didn't know the interface at all, so I didn't even know what I was looking at. I didn't know the language whatsoever. I didn't know C#, didn't know C++, didn't know any language whatsoever. So it was pretty much learning a language as well as learning a program at the same time. So I figured, okay, what do I do? I'll go and do some online tutorials. Go to YouTube. How do I make a game in Unity or whatever? And those all sucked. They were really bad because they were mostly for people who already knew how to make games or knew how to program. And for a complete novice that knew nothing, it just wasn't going to happen for me. But then I turned my eyes to Unity, and they actually have their Learn page. And when I first got started, the first thing I did was I downloaded this rollerball tutorial. And it's so basic, super, super basic. You make a ball, and you move it around, and you collect some cubes, and you get a score. Super basic. So it's like making games is easy. I could do this, no problem. And so I kept on making this rollerball tutorial until I didn't need to watch the tutorial anymore. And at that point, I was like, done. I'm a game developer. I'm going to make games. Making games is easy. But making games is easy, not making actual games. Anybody can throw up a ball and make it collect an item. That's pretty simple. There's no actual game there, though. So at this point, I want to make games. I just want to make games. So I found the Unity Asset Store. This is great. It has everything I want. It's essentially playing Lego with game development. You download your characters, download all the controllers, everything. You don't even need to do anything. You're just kind of hooking everything up, and boom, there's your game. Sell it, make $1 million, right? But I'm not going to be able to learn anything if it's just given to me. I just wasn't going to learn. And this is actually a really important point to how I got started. And my partner, the Meatly, he actually has a comic that's one of my favorites. It's actually this shirt here. And he has a character called the Void Master, and he knows the answer to everything. And basically, there's a game developer saying that he just wants to make games, but I don't know how to code, and I don't know how to draw and all that. And the Void Master basically says, well, learn. That's the answer to everything, is learn. And what I found was, everyone knows this, but Google is your friend. Google will answer absolutely everything, and that's how I learned to become a game developer. And Unity has a massive, massive community. And finding that community through Google is just as easy as this. You could go into Google, type Unity, and then anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You could see right there, I just said Unity make, and then there you go. You got, object transparent, camera, follow player. It's super easy to find anything. And 9 times out of 10, you're gonna wind up on the Unity Answers community forums, where other Unity users are answering simple questions that other developers have. And also 9 times out of 10, I don't know if anybody knows Byron Main, but 9 times out of 10, he's going to be the one who has answered it. He used to actually work in studios here in Ottawa, but now he lives in Montreal working at a studio called Budge. But anyways, it's an unlimited free resource of becoming a programmer. I mean, everybody has access to it. It's Google, it's free. So I just saved a ton of money by not going to school and just using Google. It was totally worth it. So from this point, this was my way of learning, was to create something, Google, implement, and repeat. So I would want to prototype something, so I would have like a basic goal. So let's say you set yourself a basic goal, and then you would just repeat that goal all over again. So let's say you want to create a first-person game where you shoot at targets, right? So go into Google, Unity, how do I make a first-person player? You're going to find something. If you just keep looking, you will find a basic script. And if you read the script and you read the comments and you just, learn. That's the only way you're going to do this, just learn. Next thing, how do I shoot bullets in first person? Simple as that. Next thing, how do I make the bullets hit a target? Just keep on Googling until you find your answer. It's really easy. Next thing you know, you have a first-person shooter. It may not look this good, but you get the point. So prototype, prototype, prototype. That's what you do in order to learn. You just need to prototype. For the first year or so of me doing this, by the way, I was living with my mother at the time, and I didn't have a job or anything like that. I created close to 100 simple prototypes. They're games, but they're simple prototypes. And I tried to hit as many genres as possible so that I at least understood the basic mechanics of games. So I made a first-person shooter, a flying game, a driving game, third-person, real-time strategy, side-scroller, anything that I could think of. I made at least a simple prototype for it. They all sucked. They were all terrible and janky, but I did create something, and I learned along the way. So prototyping is extremely important. It's the best way to learn. But for my experience, the one thing that was in common with all of these was AI. So along my path to becoming a game developer, I made a bunch of simple prototypes, nothing I could ever sell, nothing anyone's going to see the light of day. They're all terrible. But they all required AI. Every single one of them required AI. So I figured, hey, I'll go in the Unity asset store, I'll buy an AI asset, and there you go. Now I have a game, and I could sell that game, and it's going to be great. But instead of just doing that, I wanted to learn how to make AI, right? And again, learn. That's what I wanted to do. So I wanted to create my own AI that was going to work for all of the games, so the flying games, the driving games, all of that stuff. So while doing that, while I create this asset that's going to work for all of my games, I'm going to be learning, right? So I'm learning while I create something. And then once I have a working version of that, I figure I'll sell it in the asset store. I'll make some money, right? Profit. Just make money. Just sell it on the asset store. And luckily, that's kind of what happened. I created an asset called Breadcrumb AI. And this took probably a good 6 months of just every day learning. I'd wake up in the morning, program, and the next thing I knew, it was like 6 in the morning, and I had to sleep or something. And so this asset, it's nothing fancy, and I'm my own worst critic. But it is a dynamic AI. It uses rigid bodies, and it is a line of sight kind of AI. So if you're a player, you go around a corner, the AI is no longer going to see you. So the whole point of the breadcrumbs is that as a player, you kind of leave breadcrumbs behind. And so as soon as the AI can't see you, looks for those breadcrumbs, follows the breadcrumbs. The reason I did this is because I absolutely hated nav mesh and pathfinding and all that stuff, because there's like math and stuff involved, and I was not interested in learning all of that, which someday I probably should. But nonetheless, I created my own asset. And the whole point of it was so that it would work in all of my games, that it was cheap and extremely easy to use. I didn't want anybody to have to code, and you could just make an AI in the inspector. And that way I could just throw it into one of my games, tinker with the inspector, and there's my AI. Also at the time, it worked with Unity free. That kind of means nothing right now. But back then, this was, I guess, 2.5 years ago. Unity Pro had a lot of features that weren't available in Unity free. And so one of the selling points to a lot of assets was, hey, it works in Unity free. You could do the same thing. So that was kind of like one of the things I did to make it sellable to people who didn't want to buy Unity Pro or anything like that. So I worked on this asset quite a bit. I had a forum on the Unity website that was really good for getting feedback and feature requests and stuff like that. And then eventually it actually went on sale. This asset went on sale through Unity's, it was like October, I don't know, a Halloween sale that they were doing. And they reached out to me and they said, we saw this asset of yours, we're wondering if you want to put it on sale. This is our theme and all that stuff. So I spent a good, I think, 3 weeks before the sale started, just working on my asset, perfecting it, and then making a demo for the asset to help boost it. So I made this little game here using my AI, where I was just shooting a bunch of, I don't know what they are. I don't know. I don't know what any of it is. It's really bad. And if any of you saw the actual models and the textures, it's bad. But it looks decent from a distance, and it looks like the AI is actually doing something, right? And because I had this, Unity promoted it, and Unity is really good for that if you have an asset. And it became the top seller in the asset store, and it also became the #1 asset that was in this sale. I think it was called "They Came from the Sewers," which is why I have sewers in there, because the enemies spawn from the sewers. But yeah, so this little simple basic asset did really well, and I essentially used the asset store to fund my game development. That was the whole purpose behind this, was to make assets, make some money, so that I can continue learning and creating games and so on. So the whole purpose behind assets is to create development tools for your game, just to make your life easier. The best way about it is to generalize those tools for multiple uses. So if you're making an AI, don't make an AI for a top-down shooter. Make sure it also works first person, cars, all that stuff, right? Because if you make it general, then people will buy it. That's just how the asset store works. And then, of course, sell it on the asset store once you have that asset. And it's a great learning tool to create your own assets, because you're going to learn along the way. You're going to get feedback from people. You're going to get people who are like extremely hardcore programmers who are going to message you and be like, what are you doing here? This is stupid. And I got a lot of that because the code for this was pathetic. And if any of you saw it right now, you would laugh. It was really, really bad code. I think there was like a GameObject.find happening on every single frame for the player using the tag player. It was really bad. But like the whole point of this, like, it really doesn't matter how bad it is. If it suits a need, people are going to buy it, and that will ultimately help you in the long run. So while doing this, you need to promote yourself and your tools. You absolutely need to promote yourself. So use Twitter, use Facebook, talk to all of your peers, tell them, hey, I got an asset, this is what it is, give them a free copy of it, get some feedback, all that stuff. You need to promote yourself. No one's gonna know who you are if you're not on Twitter, you're not on Facebook. I know there's a lot of game developers that, oh, I'm not on Facebook or I'm not on Twitter. That's cool, but no one's gonna know who you are. And if no one knows who you are, how are you gonna get a job? How are you gonna sell anything? You need to promote yourself. But while you're doing all of this, prepare for failure. You need to prepare for failure, because I have a lot of crummy assets that are no longer on the asset store. Breadcrumb AI is a crummy asset because it's also like 2 years old. I mean, I don't even know if it works fully with 5.4. It was released with 4.6 or something like that. But people still buy it. People still buy this asset. So it's a failure in the sense that it's never going to be anything fantastic anymore, but at one point in time in the past, it was really good. So you do need to prepare for failure, but keep creating. Constantly make assets. Even if one asset isn't finished, make another asset. You're gonna learn along the way. So a couple of other assets that I made, I'll just go through the quick list. So there's Breadcrumb AI. Another asset I made actually to help people like myself. It was like 6 months in and I needed a way to learn basics. So I kind of created an asset called the starter kit. And it's super simple. I mean, it's got a top-down camera, it's got a first-person camera, it's got top-down movement with WASD or click to move, first-person control. It's super, super simple. If anyone saw this, they'd see how junior it is. But the important thing that I did was I commented every single line of code, everything, every if statement, everything was commented. And that was kind of its selling point, was like, hey, if you want to learn how to do the ultra basics of Unity, get this asset. Every line of code is commented, explains what it does. And I got a lot of feedback from people that said that really helped them get started. And that's kind of how I learned how to program while I was doing it. Because when I would do a simple, if statement, I wanted, okay, what exactly is this doing? And then you'd write a comment on what exactly it's doing. And then I would learn along the way and find better ways to do that if statement. So it was a fun little asset I did. It did okay. It went on sale at one point as well. Another one was Treasure Chest Maker. Does exactly what it sounds like. It makes treasure chests. I just went into Blender and modeled a bunch of different treasure chests and threw it into Unity and made a little editor that you can kind of randomize or pick different looks to your chest. There was like 100 different variations. This did not take very much time at all. It was just me kind of messing around with the Unity editor. But again, this one took off. It went on sale and it did fairly well. Destructible wall generator, that was a complete flop. It does exactly what it says. It creates a wall out of a brick prefab and then it adds physics to it so you can break a hole in the wall. It was terrible. And I think I made like 3 sales on it, so whatever. Primitive Plus is probably my best asset in terms of usage. It's super simple. It's an asset that has over 40 primitive objects. So you know how you have your cube, your sphere, your capsule, and all that in Unity? Well, I created meshes of a whole bunch of different things, like octagons and stuff like that. And I implemented it into Unity to work just like primitives. So you could even do it through code. You could do primitive plus.create primitive, and it would have a list of them. And I created this, and it was free for about a year. And I was getting over 1,000 downloads a month on it. And at one point, it was reaching over 2,000 downloads. And I was starting to kick myself, being like, if I would have made this $5, I'd be rich, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'll add some more features, and then I'll put it up for sale for like $5. I didn't get any downloads for 2 months. I got nothing. But eventually it picked up because I promote, and now it's like my top asset. Game Object Replacer does exactly what you'd think it'd do. You select an object, you select a prefab, swaps it. Pretty simple asset. Scene Switcher, once again, does exactly what you'd think it would do. String Lookup is kind of a way to, the way I designed it was if you have like a bunch of prefabs in a resource folder and you need the name of that prefab, you could just do string lookup dot prefab dot the name. It would just automatically generate all of that stuff. Basic asset, but every single one of these assets that you're looking at was a learning tool. I learned a hell of a lot just building these assets. Didn't make me a millionaire or anything like that, but it helped me learn along the way. So another important thing would be game development meetups. This was a huge part in me becoming a game developer. I'm going to quickly look at the timer. I don't know, I forgot to put the timer on this. Just want to see what. I should go a lot quicker. So go to as many meetups as possible. There are a ton in Ottawa, and more than on this list. There's IGDA Ottawa, the Unity user group here, Dirty Rectangles, and the newly created Ottawa Google Developer Group. And of course, OJAM, go to game jams. You're gonna learn a lot. Even if you don't wanna make a game and you just wanna go and hang out with people and just see what the process is of making a game, it's a great learning tool. And this is what's gonna happen when you go to these meetups, is you're gonna learn. Even if it's something you already know, if you're an amazing C++ programmer, whatever, you're gonna learn something. Even if it's something you already know, someone will have a different solution for it. And of course, you're going to meet people. And the biggest lesson you're going to learn when going to these meetups is that you're not alone in what you're doing. There's probably 6 other people in the audience that think they're terrible, or they're not sure if this is, they're good enough, or the person that's talking is extremely brilliant and I'm not good. I'm not one of those brilliant people, but I've been to talks where I don't understand a thing that the person's talking about. And I've talked with other people, and you're not alone in that. But here's the importance of meetups. You never know who you're going to meet when you're at a meetup. So the very first UG that happened back in 2015, it was the day before Valentine's Day, and I met my wife, Jillian Mood. So if I never gone to that meetup, I wouldn't have met my wife, probably. But the other important person I met was John Keon, who is a partner at Carmen Interactive. He was giving a talk. It was a very complex talk, but a very interesting talk. And at one point, they were talking about the asset store. And so I had a question about the asset store, and he knew who I was. And he said my name, and he's like, oh yeah, I know your assets. And I was like, somebody who's in the industry knows me, that's crazy. So afterwards, after his talk, I went and just had a little chat with him. And he's like, oh, we're looking for freelancers. It's like, okay, this is news to me. And he goes, what's your rate? And I was like, rate? I have no idea. So I had to do a ton of research. I'm like, well, how do you freelance as a game developer? I don't even know, right? What is a good rate? I have absolutely no clue. And so eventually, after going back and forth, I got an interview with John Keon and Mike Baker, who's here today. And the interview went well, I guess. I'm sure you guys have other things to say about it, but it went well. It was kind of a new experience for me. But in the end, I was offered my first contract with them. I had no idea what I was doing, no clue, not even the slightest. So, working with Carmen Interactive at the very beginning, they gave me this test contract, basically. It was kind of like, here's a feature we want you to implement, here's the basics of it, and all in Unity. I almost quit that first night. When they showed me what it was I had to do, I was like, nope, this is way over my head. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is terrible. And so I actually had an email ready to send in the morning to John to be like, sorry for wasting your time. I'm not going to be able to do this. I feel terrible. But when I woke up, I decided, no, screw this. I'm going to learn. I'll figure it out. So I tried to Google it. That wasn't going to help because they have their own framework, and you're not going to be able to find the answers there whatsoever. So I figured I would talk with John, and Carmen they're amazing because stupid questions are totally fine with them. And that's how I started working with them. I would ask John anything. It didn't matter what it was. I would ask him. He was more than happy to help me out. And their entire team is extremely talented. And I consider them amazing mentors. Like John Keon, I can ask any programming question. It doesn't matter how dumb it is. He'll help me out. But to be fair, 9 times out of 10, I'll ask him the question and he'll answer it in 2 seconds because it was something stupid that I did. But Mike Baker is, I consider a mentor in terms of like business. I could have any kind of game development businessy question, and it's a hoot to talk to Mike Baker about that stuff. So I consider both of them amazing mentors, and I'm super lucky that I was able to work with them. But it was a lot of hard work. But that was been 2 years now. It's 2 years of learning. So sure, I've been working with them for 2 years now on contract, earning a living. But I look at that as a lot of learning, tons of learning. So there's 2 projects that I've been working on with Carmen. There's PCH Lotto. I've actually been working on that almost 2 years now. And PCH Front Page, I've been working on that for almost a year, kind of on and off. PCH Lotto is kind of like a lottery-style game on your iOS or Android device. Chance to win cash and tokens that you can redeem on your site. I believe it's only American. Is it only American? So I don't even, yeah, you can't even download it in Canada. But nonetheless, I've been working on that. And PCH Front Page is kind of like a gamified news reader. You can collect tokens and stuff and claim it on their site and whatnot. But what's interesting about these projects is for 2 years I've been working on PCH Lotto, and I've seen the transitions of an ongoing development of a game that's actually live. It looks nothing like what you see in that picture today because of its long transition. Like what you're looking at isn't even UGUI. UGUI didn't really exist, I think, when we started. So I learned quite a bit. So I am way over time, but I'll try to rush through this. So this is what I do. All of these companies, this is what I'm a part of now. Hidden Lanterns, OJAM, CGX, the Meatly, all of these companies. The reason I became a part of all of these organizations is because if it wasn't for like the Ottawa Unity user group, I wouldn't even have a contract with Carmen. I wouldn't have anything, at least I don't know. Like if I just kind of stayed in my hole and didn't do anything, who knows? I'd just be making assets, and I'd have like 60 assets that make $2 each, right? So I owe a lot to these meetups. So I became involved with a lot of them. So OJAM was one that I helped found, and it's been a big success. In this picture here on the bottom, there's 3 winners that actually received tickets to MIGS, which is the game conference in Montreal. And the year prior to that, we had, a $2,000 cash prize that got split between 2 different teams. And it's a fantastic thing to be a part of. I love OJAM and everything that we do. It's a lot of fun. And these are just some of the games that have come out of OJAM. There's tons of games. And I might actually just do an entire talk on doing game jams in Unity, because there's a lot that people can learn. And I actually made my own 2 games at OJAM, I think 2 years ago or whatever. I'd talk about them, but we don't have time. So another thing that I've done is work with the Meatly, the webcomics. We created the Meatly games. He's got a huge fan base of over like 10,000 people on Twitter. And a lot of people were like, oh, make a Meatly game, make a Meatly game. And the Meatly is about a game developer. And so it's kind of hard to make a game about a game developer with a bunch of silly characters. So we figured, okay, we'll make something. So we made something called Meatly Makes. And it basically, you play as the Meatly. You're a game developer trying to make games, and you get attacked by a bunch of different characters. Again, I'd go into it, but we don't really have too much time. You could just search Meatly Makes, you'll find it. But it got a lot of praise. A lot of people really liked it. It was on Game Jolt, and it was one of their top games. And I'll quickly read a quick quote that we got from somebody who reviewed this on YouTube. They said, "This is a masterpiece for being one of the release titles on Game Jolt Marketplace. This is a perfect example of a small studio indie game done right." That was like amazing to hear. It was like very motivational, and both of us were like, "Oh, our game is terrible," and so it's nice to get that feeling of accomplishment. Like, yeah, I released a game and someone likes it. Made no money on it, but it was nice to hear that. So other organizations that I am a part of course, the Ottawa Unity User Group. I became the organizer of it in late 2016 when Byron Main, who was the organizer, he moved to Montreal. And this meetup was actually going to die. Like we got an email from Meetup, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to close it down and everything." And thanks to Carmen Interactive, I met with Mike Baker, and we kind of talked about, "Hey, well, let's reinvigorate this." And so we got it back up and running, and here we are. And so the things that I do with UGG is everything is sponsored by UGG. So I buy all the pizza, the drinks, this being recorded and stuff like that. That comes out of pocket, and I don't have sponsors or anything like that. And the reason I do that is because if it wasn't for all of you guys in this community, I wouldn't even have pockets. So I'm more than happy enough to give back, which is what I do. And so yeah, part of this is we do professional recording, which you can follow us or subscribe to us on YouTube, and you'll see the videos that we do. And also one thing I did was I merged with the Unity Game Makers with Ray that we talked about at the very beginning. Another thing is the launching of the Ottawa Google Developer Group, which is going to be happening next week. I help with the branding and the marketing and talking with potential speakers and stuff like that. Another company would be Jillian Mood and Partners, which my wife runs. I'm basically their general IT guy, which is hilarious considering I quit my IT career and now I do it there. And then of course the Capital Gaming Expo, which I also do the IT stuff for them, branding, marketing, general conference duties, and of course I'm going to be sponsoring it with Hidden Lanterns, my game studio. So Hidden Lanterns, we started this a long time ago, and it's the Meatly and myself who started it. And we worked on a ton of projects and a ton of games. We had a ton of stories, and we would make a prototype, and we'd either go to production or we wouldn't. But every single time we were like ready to go into production or we were halfway through production, we'd go back to this one game all the time. And when the Capital Gaming Expo was acquired by Jillian Mood and Partners, I was like, all right, well, I want Hidden Lanterns to showcase a game, but the current game we were working on was like a space horror game, and I was like, that's not fun to do at a game expo or anything like that. So we talked, hey, what about this game we've been talking about for 2 years? Why don't we make that? So we decided, okay, well, we'll make this game. So we haven't announced it yet, and I wouldn't call this an announcement, but this is the game. The game is called Turn Story. It's a choose-your-own-adventure 3D platformer. It's heavily inspired by like Nintendo art style and storytelling. I'm not going to get too much into details with the game, especially with the time that we have. But this was it's a 3D game. I don't really do 3D well, and my partner, he does do 3D, but we're not 3D artists. We're just not. Like, he's an artist, I'm a programmer. It's not going to work. So I needed somebody. I did a call out to hire a 3D artist. I looked at a lot of resumes, a lot of portfolios, and finally we landed on this guy who's right there in the audience, Pascal, who just by looking at his portfolio, I was sold instantly. He's worked on a lot of titles. I mean, you could see in his experience there, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, Battlestar Galactica, all that. So when I looked, I was like, well, he knows what he's doing. So we went back and forth, and so finally we decided, okay, well, we're going to work together. So we're working on our demo that we're going to be showcasing off at the CGX Expo floor, assuming everything works out. So I finally made it to the summary. So here's the summary of my life over the last 3 years. Because again, I downloaded Unity Christmas Day of 2013. So I Googled my way to becoming a game developer. I didn't take any classes, I didn't pay any money or go to school or anything like that. I made assets to learn and to earn some money on the side. I went to a ton of meetups. And because of those meetups, I got contracts. I do my primary contracts with Carmen Interactive, but I have done contracts with a bunch of other companies. The reason I'm still with Carmen Interactive is because they're amazing and they're great people to work with. They're easy to talk to, and a lot of people aren't like Carmen. And so I learned a crazy amount thanks to them. I became a part of many organizations, as you saw. I released a game. I started a studio. I still have no idea what the heck I'm doing. I really have no idea. So the takeaway from this is to just learn. Google absolutely everything. If you're passionate about making a game, you can do it. You just have to go and learn how to do it. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars because Google's free, Unity's free, Blender is free, Audacity is, all these things are free. You can just go and download it and make games and learn how to do it. So I'm sorry I went over the time, but thank you very much. That is my talk. You can follow me on Twitter @ZeroLogics. You can email me. We even have a Slack group. That's the OttawaGameDevelopers.slack.com. If you have a certain email address, sometimes you'll just be automatically accepted. Otherwise, you could just email me and be like, hey, I want in the Slack chat, and I'll just let you in. But that's my talk. There's absolutely no time for questions. So thank you very much.